Hey everybody, what's going on? My name is Danny K, and this is another episode of Blockchain Breakdown. Today, first off, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody out there that celebrated their festivities yesterday. And also, Merry $25,000 Bitcoin as we hit a new all-time high right around the festive season. So congrats to the Bitcoin longs over there, and without further ado, let's jump into some news. First article here that I got on Crypto Potato, Max Keiser, the well-known TV host and Bitcoin bull maximalist, basically went out and said that the SEC will target other garbage altcoins after Ripple. So if you don't know, Ripple recently got hit with had formal charges, got hit with a lawsuit by the SEC for conducting a illicit $1.3 billion unregistered security offering, which is crazy because they've been around for 4 or 5 years operating in full transparency, and all of a sudden the SEC hits them with this, and then the head of the SEC literally pressed these charges and then resigned the next day, which I think is really weird. But I'm getting on a tangent. Anyways, Max Keiser went on a rant and kind of said that a lot of these altcoins that you see are going to be destroyed by the SEC. The SEC is going to be pressing charges on a lot of these. There's been rumors that, and this is pure speculation, but there's been rumors that Chainlink's going to get hit with the securities violation, with ADA getting hit with a securities violation, this and that, and this and that. And I think right now, people are having like SEC fever. There is just a lot of people freaking out about what happened with Ripple and what's going to happen to other currencies, and I think it's just kind of the trend at the moment. Especially since the head of the SEC has resigned and then Biden's administration is coming in, and they tend to be a lot more crypto friendly. Not entirely, but they are way more positive on crypto rather than the current administration. However, he basically went on to say that despite XRP's massive price drop, the host basically said that there could crash another 99% from here. However, when it comes to price speculations, who knows? All I know is that right now the Ripple team is scrambling to figure out what they're going to do with the SEC and how they're going to attack this, whether they're going to settle or whether they're going to fight it. And even there's been, and also too, I should note that, there's been a lot of exchange, not a lot, but there's been a number of exchanges, most notably Bitstamp, that have decided to halt or delist XRP specifically to U.S. clients. So that is, I think, a very interesting move. And I don't know if you've been around here for a while, and it's still kind of the same attitude, but for the longest time, and still to this day, XRP, Ripple Labs was considered the banker's coin. And everyone that was real kind of like a crypto head, was real into decentralization, real independent, real anonymous values, things like that, was really against XRP and didn't want to see it succeed because they felt that XRP went against all of the mainstay original crypto ethos. So it's interesting to see that, like, okay, XRP gets kicked down, and now you have these exchanges like kind of turning their backs on them, as well as even companies that partnered with Ripple, like MoneyGram, said like, oh, we're distancing ourselves till you figure this out. Which, is understandable, but at the same time, I'm sure there are a lot of Bitcoin and Ethereum maximalists out there that are really, really happy to see XRP get wrecked, as they say. So yeah, that's essentially it. Max Keiser, I know I kind of went on a tangent there and talked about a completely different topic, but Max Keiser thinks that the SEC is going to target a whole lot of garbage altcoins. Me personally, I don't know. I don't like to make those speculations. But it would seem reasonable to consider that the new administration is much more crypto friendly. So, that may change the course of things. Next up is this article by Joseph Young called When Alt Season? Here's Why Bitcoin is Leaving Major Altcoins like Ethereum Behind. So I don't know if you've noticed, but obviously Bitcoin has been on a tear recently. It has passed $25,000, new all-time high. Everyone is extremely excited. But a lot of the altcoins have not been performing very well, especially when you pair them against BTC. While they've made gains in US dollars, they haven't really made gains against BTC. So Basically, the Ethereum and altcoin market are stagnating against Bitcoin, with Ethereum BTC pairs being the key to the next all season. Ethereum, Ether, the native cryptocurrency of Ethereum blockchain, has been lagging behind BTC. Historically, when BTC surges, altcoins tend to rally with larger upside price movements. This time, however, Bitcoin has been clearly outperforming the altcoin market, particularly in December. Bitcoin market cap dominance has recently risen to a one-year high of around 70%, largely due to a big sell-off in XRP in this past week. There's a lot of people saying that a lot of people sold off to XRP and went into Bitcoin or Ethereum. It continues to say the difference in the price discovery of Bitcoin, the difference between the current price trend of Bitcoin and the previous bull cycles in 2018 and 2019 is that Bitcoin has entered price discovery. Simply put, price discovery is when an asset price surpasses the previous all-time high and keeps going into uncharted territories. So I think you get the gist of this article. Something that I kind of want to just note on it. I think alt season, and this is kind of funny, it could... I have ideas of why alt season as a meme and as it actually happening could perform exactly like it did in 2017, or could be completely different, right? And I can get into that a little bit, but essentially, as we've seen with Bitcoin being in the new all-time highs, a lot of these altcoins are still, 60, 70, 80% down from their all-time highs. So you think, oh, there's probably going to be an upside. Well, possibly. I think that the environment is very different. And while I will say that I think that, coming to the next super cycle, the next 4-year cycle of Bitcoin, we will see a lot of these altcoins definitely do very, very well. But their time is not yet. Historically, when Bitcoin hits its all-time high, it maybe does a little bit of pullback, but then goes on a tear. And it's not until that tear is really over that you see a lot of that money then going and pumping into a lot of these altcoins. Like historically, as far as I can remember, the Bitcoin all-time high in 2017 ended at December, and then come in January, February, March, that's when you started to see these major rips on these no-name altcoins that a lot of people profited from. But I also think that there might be a little different, a little bit of difference in terms of capital availability, right? So if you think back to 2017, the big thing was Bitcoin hard forks and altcoin airdrops and all sorts of stuff. And there was essentially, and I know a lot of people don't agree with it, but essentially there was money created out of nothing, right? So there was a lot of that going on. There wasn't regulation behind it. People didn't know what was happening. So people had all this extra cash that they ended up dumping into projects that they cared about and that succeeded. And, not to say that some hard forks didn't do well or some altcoin airdrops didn't do well, but for the most part, there was a lot more capital around because of this random capital generation. Now, this time around, we see a lot of these DeFi projects, and I'll get into, actually, I have an article coming up about the recent airdrops, but you have a lot of these DeFi projects that are airdropping to their users that are early adopters to their platforms, and that is a way that people are generating new revenue, but I don't know if that is going to be on the same level of capital generation that it was back in 2017 with all those hard forks, if that makes any sense. But to move along, because I've rambled on quite a bit here, I will get to that DeFi news next, actually. So for right here, this is a really interesting article. DeFi trader scores over 20 million in 1inch token Christmas drop. So if you didn't know, 1inch is a DeFi, a decentralized exchange that you use with like your MetaMask wallet or your Nano Ledger or Trezor. And they recently launched a couple of months back, and apparently they did an airdrop. I know a lot of people personally got involved in it. I got a little bit from the airdrop, but essentially this guy, right, is one serial DeFi user now controls around 11% of 1inch token supply following the exchange government token distribution. I believe that the date of the stamp was back in September of 2000, or back in September or something like that. I can't remember, but it wasn't a very recent date. So I also wonder if, let me take a look here, because also eligible to qualify for the airdrop, a trader must have completed a transaction on the platform between September 15th. Yes, that's right. So I think it's interesting that, now you have these DeFi platforms and you do have these airdrops. Granted, we had those back in 2017 and the other altcoin rally and with the hard forks. But this, I think, is a little bit different because it's not just some random ICO with an idea and no product. Here, it's like, okay, you need to have a product with people using it, and then that's like the trend, right? So I think that DeFi, usability product comes first, and then they get, their quote unquote ICO or airdrop. So it's kind of a little bit of a different environment. But yeah, so essentially, 1inch announced that they're going to be airdropping, their 1inch token, and the highest recipient of the free token distribution received 9,749,686 tokens that are worth about $27 million at the peak of the value of $2.08 or $2.80, which, if you think about it, is insane, right? It's like, wow, you just generated more money than most people will even imagine having in their lifetimes. But I also think, and this is my skeptical side, that what if this person was someone like on the inside 1inch team and was part of that DEX aggregator and just started to know what the qualifications were and just started doing all that stuff real fast back in September, so then they could wait enough time, do the airdrop, and then he became a millionaire. Now, that's just me being super cynical, and I have no reason to believe that that's actually a thing, but it does make you think. But it is interesting because, if you can find these platforms and use them early on and become an early adopter of these new platforms that end up doing well, you can, possibly make a fair amount of money through airdrops. And I think that that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on. That's something I'm going to actually start researching a lot more. But I think that these DeFi trading platforms and these DeFi-based products are going to be the equivalent to the ICO catalyst in 2017, if that makes any sense. So yeah, moving on to the next article. Here is article DeFi data manipulation is too easy and current Oracle solutions aren't helping much. So DeFi exploits are all too common for mass adoption, but there are solutions to the Oracle problem. It seems like every week we hear news of another DeFi project being hacked or exploited. The latest crop of victims include such projects as Harvest Finance, Acropolis, Value DeFi, Origin, and of course Compound. When exploits do occur, they usually involve manipulating the reference points like ETH/DAI on a data source such as Curve, Kyber, or Coinbase Pro. Sometimes it's a mistake, as in the SNX case, where the Korean won was quoted with the wrong decimal place. So essentially, and to continue on, let's see. This article goes on to talk about some of the ways to mitigate the risk of these hacks. This is to just kind of expand on what they were saying a little bit earlier. This is a very important part of the crypto space infrastructure to get right and get secure. And the people that can do it will make a lot of money. I think that there's an article, there's a token called the API 3, I believe it's called. I'm going to do a little bit of research and post a video on that, do like an official blockchain breakdown of that token or that project. But essentially what these oracles do is they are kind of like, in a way, data transmitters. And they're very vital to the infrastructure. So essentially, that's how blockchains get information and data transmitted back and forth so they can execute on terms of smart contracts. So, for example, let's say you have a bet on whether Boxer A versus Boxer B is going to win in a fight. And you have a bet that on $20 million that Boxer A is going to win. Well, these oracles can, at this point, because they're kind of in their infancy, be manipulated. And if you can figure out a way to overcome an oracle and it will, I guess, hack an oracle and send it the wrong data and verify the wrong data, even if, let's say, Boxer B won, but you convince the oracle that Boxer A won, then that smart contract will execute and you will earn a lot of money. And as you can imagine, people can make very, very serious and large bets, so there's a lot of money on the line. So that's kind of the big issue that people are kind of addressing right now. I know Chainlink is doing it, and the API 3 is also doing it. But here's an interesting article about ways that people are going about mitigating the risk of these hacks and exploits. Things like using multiple oracles. So for every structure, it basically has different preferred sources of data, how they come to the consensus on the data, and how they calculate those prices. One potential option would be dealing with less liquid pairs to utilize multiple oracles. While this will introduce an added cost, new emerging oracles will have made great strides in reducing costs compared to legacy oracles. Placing bounds around prices would act as a sanity check. For stablecoins, we can place minimum and maximum values to mitigate the potential exploit. Circuit breakers, which we kind of have on the New York Stock Exchange, if it drops, I think it's like 20%, then all trading is halted. But for cryptocurrency pairs other than range-bound stablecoins, we can set trading ranges, and should those ranges be breached, we can implement a cooling off period. This would function in the same way as the circuit breakers used on NASDAQ. Averages, time-weighted averages, or volume-weighted averages for the prices for varying periods of time, depending on the DeFi project use case. And another one is market internals. When attacks do occur, they often exploit only one side of the market internals, such as bids only. Large and sudden swings in bid-ask spreads should be a sign that something could be amiss. And then it goes on. There's like a volatility index and some other explanations for how and why they can tackle this problem. But I think it is a very, very important problem, and it's the next iteration of making blockchain become as useful as, say, the internet, where it's user-friendly and communicative. And so I think it's this specific aspect of having the ability to transmit data on blockchains through these oracles is a very, very vital part of the ecosystem. And there's a lot of money to be had in solving and securing that problem. All right, so next up, we actually have an article. It's kind of silly. It's a little bit about like a Twitter war, but essentially, it is an article about whether Joe Biden and Yellen will crack down on the crypto quote unquote criminal cesspool by Noréli Roubini. So. In his ill-fated tweet, Dr. Doom Rubini spells out the death of cryptocurrency once again, just as XRP gains 35% and Bitcoin aims for new all-time highs. Essentially, the historical Bitcoin naysayer Noréli Roubini believes that incoming U.S. President Joe Biden will go much further than Donald Trump in trying to control and regulate cryptocurrencies. Basically, he went on a tweet storm and both acknowledging his dislike for cryptocurrencies and also his ability to unknowingly, as this article puts it, unknowingly call market bottoms by mistake. So essentially, Rubini went off on a tirade to this pro-Bitcoin lawyer, basically saying that you're delusional, and that a lawyer studying the fallout from the recent news that the U.S. lawmakers were demanding that stablecoin payments implement on-chain anti-money laundering and know your customer AML KYC identification processes. Shavinsky argued that the idea currently had exactly zero chance of becoming an enforceable law. Rather, it represented the personal views of Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary under Trump, soon to be replaced by Biden's pick, Janet Yellen. This just goes on and on about kind of the speculation between the SEC and the United States Treasury and what kind of regulations that they're going to impose as the new administration takes hold. It's always, personally, to me, it's kind of hard to tell, right? There's no crystal ball. You can never really predict the future, but one can imagine that the Biden administration is a little bit more pro-crypto friendly than the Trump administration or Steve Mnuchin. And so that bodes well. However, as with all government regulations, in my opinion, a lot of people are trying to regulate something or control something that generally they know very little about and end up kind of messing up the works, right? And I know that more regulation will probably stifle innovation in the crypto space, but there is some important uses for it, right? So granted, there's always the misnomer talk that cryptocurrencies is just used for criminal activity, money laundering, terrorism, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that it really is a very, 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 very small percentage of crypto transactions are related to criminal activity. And in fact, the U.S. dollar is much more commonly used for money laundering, drug trafficking, things of that nature. So it just makes for good headlines, and it makes for good government officials going after the bad guys, right? So you hear this kind of rhetoric quite a bit, and it gets a little frustrating. But to kind of get back to this article, I think there is an important part for a little bit of anti-money laundering laws and know your customer laws and things like that. But there is also a limit to it as well, right? So you can't, impose a bunch of regulations and expect things to work freely and openly like they did prior to those regulations. And the idea that, they were floating this idea that there's going to be KYC requirements for non-custodial wallets or custodial wallets, sorry, like the Ledger or the Trezor or like, your hardware wallet, that they were going to require you to KYC that, and that anytime you send or receive money to an exchange, you're going to have to, give details of where that money came from, et cetera, et cetera. I see that as actually being a very hard thing to implement, and also is something that shows that these regulators don't necessarily understand how this technology works. And that being said, you have the head of the SEC file a lawsuit against Ripple and XRP, and then resign the next day. You have Steve Mnuchin, who's been very publicly anti-Bitcoin, who's leaving the administration, obviously with Trump and things like that. And so it will definitely usher in a new era, and I think it's really important to keep an eye on how this regulation gets shaped, and have your voice be heard if you're in the U.S. I know a lot of people feel like public comments to SEC regulations or decisions or things like that have very little impact, and maybe they do, maybe they don't, but at least it's something that it is available to you to try and help shape regulation. But I also know that there's a lot of very powerful and intelligent individuals in the crypto industry that don't want to see this industry stifled and bogged down with all sorts of rules and regulations that make innovation basically inconsequential and cause a lot of these companies and these startups to flee the United States and go to much more crypto friendly areas. So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting to say the least. But with that, I think I'll leave it here. I'm kind of been rambling on and on about all these topics. If you've made it this far, I love you. I appreciate the love and the support. If you could, please give a like or comment on the video. It really, really helps a small channel like me. Like, I'm really trying to grow this thing. I'm hoping to be posting videos at least weekly. I know I'm spotty with it, but the holidays are kind of crazy. But anyways, if you could, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, share it to a friend, whatever. I appreciate it. But my name is Danny K. This is another episode of Blockchain Breakdown, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.